where do you feel that men are standing right now? Or what do you think that's the position where men are standing right now? What main difficulties are we facing, and where are we heading to?
Yeah, wow, that's a great question. And yeah, it's hard to answer because there's so many men, so many parts of the world, so many cultures, and I can't claim to really fully know, but my sense is, and this is me speaking from my own experience as a man and how I'm relating to this. I believe there's a collective sense of the culture of masculinity, and as much as some men might be starting to do their own work, like I don't really believe our work is done. Like we're all, I don't know, transforming simultaneously is my sense. Is like it's sort of like a no man left behind thing. And so there's very much parts of me that are still unwinding from I don't know, you could call it patriarchal conditioning, whatever you want to call it, just the sort of unconscious masculine that is causing harm in the world. And I think there's a lot of that still going on, unfortunately. And what I see is that the basis for the harm that we are causing as men is this focus on this "what about me" mindset. It's a masculinity that is so driven and directional that it forgets that it needs to be somewhat relationally oriented. So it actually needs to have a sense of connection to its feminine wisdom, because the feminine, from my perspective, is the connection part. It's the relational part. It's the sense that we are all part of something larger. And until men start to practice that in their lives in every area, we're gonna keep causing harm. And this happens on the micro level, and it happens on the macro level. It happens in our, again, like how we parent our children, how we make love to our partners, and in how we run our businesses and our corporations. And every choice has a significance, and it's until we really, in my opinion, consider the significance of every choice, and we're fully awake, fully aware, fully present in those choices, and taking responsibility for the choices that we're making and the impact of those. That's just an ongoing practice. And so to me, that's the work. It's about accountability, and it's about, so it's two pieces that I think are really crucial for men, is like being accountable for the choices that we make and the impact that we make, and being willing to feel that impact. I think part of the men have been somewhat desensitized to our impact, so we can, plow through the world not really feeling things. And so part of it is like, I think a resensitization training that I see men really needing, like being more aware of what's happening in ourselves and our bodies, because our bodies, if we are resensitized, they feel things. Our nervous systems are designed to feel what's happening in how we're relating to our environment. But so the tricky paradox is not becoming like so overly concerned from like a mental place that we abandon our willingness to, you know, move powerfully through the world. Because what I also see in the collective is, at least in America in particular, is you know, this kind of nice guy approach where we abandon our truth, our honesty, and our authenticity as a sort of surface way of pleasing other people, you know, so we can kind of tiptoe around. And it's tricky because we live in this cultural climate right now where, you know, men are being called out and called forward for the harm that they have caused or supposedly have caused. You know, we're being kind of scapegoated as the umbrella of men under the patriarchy, which we know is not completely true, you know, but we can absorb that. You know, I see a lot of men absorbing that as, you know, the burden of like feeling responsible for all of it. So and then translating that into, it's not really okay to be a man, so I'm going to hide the parts of me that are a man, just to, you know, only to try to make other people feel safe in a way. And so part of that work is, you know, it comes back to that resensitization. Like the more I find when I see men getting more in touch with themselves and their truth and feeling who they are at their essence and their core, the more comfortable they feel showing up in the world and they're as their truth, and they're not feeling like they need to tiptoe around, but they can, you know, be grounded in a way where they're, you know, they're not necessarily bulldozing, trying to overly assert themselves, but they're just relaxed and comfortable in their skin and confident in like, yeah, I'm okay as I am, and I don't need to prove anything. It isn't this like macho version of masculinity of like, I'm putting on this thing to show, you know, like the headbutting primal way of doing it. But like, yeah, I'm just good with who I am is what it comes down to.
And
that makes sense?
Yeah. And what I can get from this, it's also like it's a very tricky process, like, because that's also something, that a pattern that I see repeating again a lot, and I also see in myself and in my personal process. It's this balance between not being an egocentric jerk and thinking and having other centric values, and having in mind like other people and humanity and the environment and the world, and knowing the impact that our decisions have in the world, but at the same time not going to the other extreme of just putting the others first and be too complacent. I don't even know if that's a word, like being too nice guy and just putting others' needs before yours, so you are not really asserting yourself or lose personal power. So I think that's a lot of the tricky process we men are living right now, and I totally agree with you. Also with the fact that we kind of feel, because there's all this force pushing back from all the pain that masculine, our past, I wouldn't know how to define it, because I don't like also saying like too much toxic masculinity, but it is the toxic expressions of masculinity that have caused pain in history. And we kind of now are realizing that and feel the burden of that and feel responsible for that. So we try to not be and not replicate that. But at the same time, it's a difficult process to also honor the work of our ancestors and be able to integrate their power and their energy and their force in a different way, not just canceling them or canceling everything that has been done before. So it's very interesting. And also when it comes to connecting with our emotions or connecting with our sensibilities, right? It's kind of, or we may either feel that we don't have the space, or we are not going to be recognized for that. And even from women, like it's not easy if a man is showing up too vulnerable, or maybe he's through a process where, or at least this is what I can see, if he's in the process where he's processing its vulnerabilities and can't really hold them in that moment, it's not always going to be respected by a woman, unless it's a woman that also have that conscious energy to be able to hold that man's vulnerability. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I really appreciate what you shared before that, and including that, and I think it's a good piece to unpack. And I agree. I think, you know, this is, you know, multi-layered, and it really depends on who a man is in relationship with, how she's wired, what her conditioning is, what her trauma is, all that kind of stuff. And so it's hard to speak to completely generally, but what I've seen is that the process of integration, which includes you know, learning how to be with our own emotions, you know, being with our own emotional response, even our own feminine energy. And a lot of men reject themselves in this way. Like they say, they haven't quite come to that place of integration. So they've said, like, you know, this part of me is not acceptable. So in some way I'm rejecting it. Like I might even be trying to be vulnerable, but at the same time, I'm saying, what I see is like men don't give themselves full permission, and they're still looking for validation from their partner to be who they are. And in a way, they're giving their power to their partner by doing that. They're saying, like, will you accept me here? Will you love me here? And that's a very difficult thing. That's almost a burden, you know, on another person. And so I don't find that works very well. Sometimes, you know, if the person, it may not be a romantic partner, you know, because maybe they have a different need or expectation of a man in that romantic context. But, you know, maybe if the relationship has evolved to a certain point and certain requests have been made, and a partner has done enough work on themselves to be able to, you know, recognize that, you know, men too have these needs and, you know, need a space to be able to bring these things, then yeah, that can be brought. But I think sometimes that requires some process. Sometimes it requires training your partner, you know, making those requests and then setting up the space where that can be invited. But in a way, that's also like, to be able to be a stand for those needs in relationship is a way of, you're validating yourself already. So I would say the primary ingredient in this case is like, you have to love yourself enough to be who you are, and you have to, when we do that, it's a lot easier for other people to receive us, you know. But if we are looking for that external validation and we're rejecting ourselves, it's going to be harder, you know. Like if we were with therapists or something, it might be different. Like they're just, you know, practicing being in that unconditional space. But in a romantic relationship, you know, it often requires being self-validated enough to either request what we need, or, you know, having the courage to just own it. Like, hey, I'm a fucking blobbering mess right now, and I just need to cry and throw a fit, you know. And there's something really powerful about that ownership that actually creates a safe space, you know. But if we reject it in ourselves, it feels unsafe to a partner.
And I think that relates a lot with with what you were speaking about at the beginning, with the sense of community, and with what type of men you or woman or people in general you relate with, right? Because when it comes to, if you're relating with people that are generally identified with the, put it this way, the more superficial layers of themselves, you'll have to relate from there. But if you are in a space where you have other men, friends, colleagues, a community where you can connect with people that are in that process of introspection and connecting on deeper levels of themselves, you will also be able to have that shared space where those deeper levels can be processed and you can connect in a more profound healing and way, right?
I agree. Yeah, and I think it's a great way to practice that, and to be in these environments where there's a culture of like, we're all wanting this, and there's sort of a shared agreement. And even there, it still might require some level of courage. And I want to offer the caveat that, like, we don't have to reserve it to that only, you know, like these men's circles or you know, co-ed groups, they're an environment to practice that. But if we reserve it only to those spaces, it just sort of can become like a self-indulgent masturbation. I don't know the way to put it, but you know, like, I think the real transformation happens when we bring it out into the world, when we bring it to the grocery store, when we bring it to the gas attendant. And that's where, you know, it might happen more subtly there. Like, you might not start, you know, talking to the gas attendant about, you know, your grief and you know, all these deeper things. But I've noticed, like, we can invite that depth more, right, with that courage. And because my belief is that on some level, this might not be true, but I want to believe that everybody wants this. You know, everybody wants more depth, everybody wants more authenticity, and so, you know, we can be leaders in that way, and create more experiences and moments like that, especially as we get more comfortable activating this in our bodies and our relationships. Yeah.
I love that. I love that, and I do agree. And I think that's actually like the most challenging thing, although there's always like this first step when you start opening to at least do it in a safe space, so you can feel how it feels like to open maybe certain aspects of yourself that you've never showed up. So it's good to break the barrier, just doing it in a space where you know it's gonna land safely and it's not gonna crack you if the other person reacts wrongly. But then afterwards, the real thing comes in the real world, when you're in a moment where you have to really have that power to show up vulnerably and really owning that vulnerability, or opening that space for the other person to also connect in that level when they are not used to doing it. And that's a real leadership also. So I totally agree with that one.